like to focus on unearthing business opportunities in the Ghanaian health sector. And I have a really good selection of panelists who are going to dive into this together. I have pharmacist Benjamin Kwame Botwe, who's the current president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana, and Dr. Adjabu, Nicholas Adjabu, who is head of Biomedical Engineering at Ministry of Health at the Biomedical Engineering Unit. Also have Mrs. Ekuba Odoi Atsem, who is the founder and CEO of 3M and C Health Systems here in Ghana. Dr. Nsiah Asare, Presidential Advisor on Health, is also with us, and he's with the Agenda 111 Directorate. Really looking forward to hearing more about that. And also Professor Abraham Annang, who's the director of the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research. And finally, Professor McBangonluri, who's the president and founder of Academic City University College. So with that, I'll be introducing my panelists in greater detail. But the role of the private sector in healthcare delivery cannot be overstated. In fact, over the past about 2 decades, the importance of public-private partnerships has really come to the fore, whether you want to call them PPPs or product development partnership PDPs. It's very clear that some of the most innovative products that have come to the healthcare sector over the past 2 decades have been born out of these public-private partnerships, whether it is to produce drugs, vaccines, diagnostics, and other technologies. Public-private partners have come in very handy. However, anytime the public and the private are relating, it's really important to have clarity regarding how this is done, particularly because the intersection between healthcare delivery and the private sector, albeit profit-making, can sometimes get very blurry. And ultimately, we're interested in the health of persons and their welfare, and money or finances should not be an impediment. So how do we position ourselves strategically in such a way that the private sector is able to play the appropriate role, is able to interface with government and the public sector, and also able to identify what the opportunities might be and harness them, because arguably government is not always in the best position to identify what may be business opportunities, because that is not their primary focus. Whereas in the private sector, identifying business opportunities, being provided with the appropriate platform to take advantage of these opportunities is absolutely important, and that is their lifeblood. So with that, I'd like to get into the discussion. I will be touching on the pharmaceutical industry, we're touching on Agenda 111, and touching on pharmaceuticals and medical device regulation, looking at the R&D sector in academia, also private sector initiatives, and also academic partnerships. So I'd like to go straight away with you, Dr. Nsiah Asare, given your extensive experience in the healthcare sector. Currently now the Presidential Advisor on Health, and also with the Agenda 111 Directorate. Your experience has been all the way from the district level in Ghana through to leading a teaching hospital, community teaching hospital, and then ultimately at the helm of the Ghana Health Service. So really span quite a wide gamut of healthcare delivery in Ghana. I'd like to ask you how you see Agenda 111, maybe you can quickly tell us what that is about, and also the AFCON, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, how you see these dovetailing into each other by way of presenting hitherto unavailable business opportunities within the Ghanaian health sector for German Ghanaian business collaborations. Dr. Nsiah.
Thank you very much and welcome back, John. And good afternoon to all the panelists for this session. Yes, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought forth a lot of things that we've seen in this country and globally. What we realize is that Ghana has a gap deficit in infrastructure development across the country. There was a study which was done and came out that about 88 of our 260 districts in this country have nothing that we can call a hospital, which means that there are some districts without even a single doctor in that district. That is one. Two, government also found out that because there are no health facilities like a district or a primary health care delivery center there, what it means is that patients who are even ill go straight from their district to another district or to a regional hospital or teaching hospital. We also realized that there was even problems where we wanted to expand testing facilities. There were no hospitals to expand the facilities to. And we also realized that there was, that somewhere in 2018, we added 6 new districts to the 10 district regions in the country. So we have 16 regions. And only 10 of the regions have the regional hospitals. So the 6 new regions have no regional hospitals. And you also realize that if you look at mental health services, they are all the stationary or where you can admit mental patients are mainly the huge mental health facilities are down south. Even though the new policy is to integrate mental health services in our normal clinical care. So the government came out, and exactly on the 26th of April, when the president did one of his updates, he came out clearly with his vision following COVID-19. That time you used to call it Agenda 88, that he wanted to put regional district hospitals in all the 88 districts without hospitals. And government then increased it to 111, including the regional hospitals and also the 2 psychiatric hospitals. So what government is going to do, government is going to undertake a major investment in healthcare infrastructure development in the country. In fact, the largest in the history of this country since independence. And every one of the districts is going to have 100-bed, well-equipped, well-structured, with a unique structure of a hospital which will have health workers, all the equipment and all the infrastructure in place in all 101 district hospitals. And the government is also going to put up 7 new regional hospitals, which will be about 170 to 200 beds, depending upon the size of the district, of the region. Inclusive Western region. Western region has a Fie Kwanta hospital, which has run down. Fie Kwanta hospital will be refurbished and rehabilitated to become a metropolitan hospital for Sekandi Taprade, metropolis. And so we have a new regional hospital at Western region, and all the other 6 regions will also have new regional hospitals. What you want to use the new regional hospitals for is to also, they will become centers of excellence for different disciplines in medicine. For example, if it is a HAFU, they have urology unit there so that people can be referring their urological cases to. In addition, we also are moving into a stage where we'll have what we call the Ghana Center for Disease Control, CDC. And we will develop research centers in the 3 ecological areas, the one in Namvrongo, the one in Kintampo, and the one down south at Dodowa, will be expanded with the command center at Kolebu, where the disease control people will do the normal command center and then look at how as a whole. So this is a huge infrastructure development, which will come with equipment, will come with accommodation. We want to also to make sure that every hospital that you put up now will have what you call the medical village, so that the staff, the health professionals will be attracted to stay on the hospital campus with all the facilities attached to a very good medical village. So these are some of the things that government of Ghana is going to cut the sword very soon. We have done everything. We've done the drawings. We have acquired the lands in all the districts, and we have acquired the lands in all the regions to put up the regional hospitals and the district hospitals and also the 2 psychiatric hospitals. So this is a huge investment for the private sector in terms of equipment. We want to use as much as possible for the district hospitals our own indigenous contractors to put up, and we've divided it into groups Some people will be putting up the hospital facilities, some people will be putting up the other ancillary infrastructure like accommodation and the rest. But we also would like to get bulk procurement of medical equipment, which can be well maintained with a proper maintenance agreements so that the equipment will last for a long period of time. So in a nutshell, this is the government's infrastructure agenda because of COVID to put up Agenda 111, that is 101 district hospitals, 7 regional hospitals of rehabilitation of Efia Kwanta Hospital, and 2 psychiatric hospitals, 1 in Tamale and 1 in Kumasi. And then we shall also later on refurbish, or in the long run, refurbish the Accra Psychiatric Hospital, Panta Hospital, and also the Ankafu Hospital, so that we will get a place where we can train mental health professionals and also do specialist care for mental patients in the country. So this is John. This is what we are doing so far as Agenda 111 is concerned. All these hospitals will be electronically have electronic medical records and will be digitized, so that it can also be used to move forward to do teleconsultations, teleradiology for the hospitals or the clinics which will be using their services as referral centers. So we'll be going also into smart or digital health as far as healthcare is concerned. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Nsiah. It sounds like a really massive health infrastructure project that will be embarked on, which it clearly indicates that there'll be a lot of inputs needed. You touched on most of them, particularly around the buildings and the supplies that will need to come in there. But ultimately, once these once these facilities are put up, they will be staffed by people, and they will require inputs for running consumables and several others. And this is where I'd like to bring in Mr. Ben Botwe, who's the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana. And before that, I just would like to remind you that this event is being organized in cooperation with the Special Initiative on Training and Job Creation, which is an initiative of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ. And it operates under the brand Invest for Jobs, and it's implemented, among others, by the GIZ. And just once more reminding you that this event is being recorded. My name is John Amwesi from the Nsiah University of Science and Technology. So based on what you said, Dr. Nsiah, Mr. Ben Botwe, as president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana, where do you see the pharmaceutical industry coming in? From the angle of producing the drugs, producing the vaccines, the diagnostics, and so on. Because as we advance, the requirements for setting up these kinds of facilities become more stringent. There are world standards. You need to meet WHO, GMP, and several others. One may regard these as barriers, but they are largely opportunities to be able to produce not only for Ghana, but also for the sub-region, because these will be internationally accepted quality standards. So how do you see the way in which not only the government, but all responsible actors could improve the opportunities for setting up for the production of these inputs, including the consumables, the drugs, vaccines, diagnostics, others, PPE, which will be used in these facilities which government is looking to set up under Agenda 111? And how do you see German industry or business coming in to support this?
Yeah. Do you hear me, John?
Loud and clear, please proceed. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, good afternoon, John, and good afternoon, panelists, co-panelists, and I'm grateful to be part of this whole process and to look at the opportunities that are available in the pharma sector. But before I come to address the very specific questions, let me say that in the value chain, in the pharmaceutical value chain, several opportunities exist, right from academia and research, and I can see some of my academic friends here, they might look at that moving on. And then also in the area of manufacturing, where you really asked about, and then also the supply chain. So all these areas call for have opportunities that can be taken advantage of. But let me center on your specific questions about the pharma manufacturing, not as part of the whole pharma industry. In this country, pharmaceutical manufacturing is very old. I mean, it started over 50 years ago. It has gone through several phases. Presently, there are a number of local manufacturing companies owned by the private sector, and they are producing very good quality medicines, maybe about between 25 to 30% of our national consumption. And that creates a gap. With the government policy, with the medicines policy on generic manufacturing or the use of generic medicines, most of them are in the area of manufacturing generic medicines. And therefore, that gap is there to be filled. I can also say that the West African market also presents a big opportunity. Having had opportunity myself to work in a number of countries in the region, some of them are close to 100% net importers of medicines and have been looking around for some supplies from our region. And indeed, some supplies from our regions are going on both officially and unofficially. And it is also an area that we can level out and take advantage of. Coming to standards, there are various standards that manufacturers are complying with, and you talked about good manufacturing practices. The regulator in Ghana, the FDA, has manufacturing practices that have to be complied with, and these manufacturers are inspected from time to time and are certified to produce, and therefore that is going on. But if you want to enter into the international market, like you rightly said, then you have to abide by certain international standards and specifications. And you mentioned the WHO pre-qualification as one of them. And this is one thing that will open opportunity for exports, particularly for procurement by large procuring agencies, including UNICEF and the Global Fund sources and so on, and WHO as well. You need also, as a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility, to also comply with other systems. For instance, in the registration of products, your products will have to be registered. In West Africa, I know for sure that there is harmonization of medicines regulatory practices ongoing in the region. And these practices sort of create opportunity to limit the multiplicity of registrations in different countries. These times there are joint assessment of medicines and so on that are shortening the process of entering into other markets. One of the very major things I want to talk about in complying with these standards is the issue of bioequivalence and bioequivalence testing. You realize that it is one thing that is critical in all the standards around the world that manufacturers have to comply with. I had an opportunity to also serve on a team, again, working with GIZ to sort of do some feasibility studies on the possibility of establishing a bioequivalence center in Ghana to serve both Ghana and the sub-region. And I must say that in West Africa, the major manufacturers of medicines are Ghana and Nigeria, and these facilities are not available for them to even access and comply with. So that brings a huge opportunity for private sector involvement in this, particularly with the German technology and systems that even supported the feasibility studies here. This is something that we can take advantage of, get it established so that manufacturers in both Ghana and Nigeria can take advantage of. So the pharma manufacturing sector is very fertile in this country, and there are gaps. But let me finally say that there is also some government policies that are going to really support these areas. And this includes the government 10-point plan for industrial development, which makes a policy on getting Ghana to be a pharmaceutical manufacturing hub for Africa, possibly. And then also the removal of VAT on some raw materials and active pharmaceutical ingredients. And also providing direct funding sometimes to the private sector, partnering the private sector to go into production. And therefore, with all these, the pharmaceutical manufacturing area is very fertile. I just want to add by saying that one of the areas that we have also sort of not taken very, very critical look at is the supply chain in these products. Now that COVID has told the whole world that vaccination will have to be done across board. Sometimes even parks are being converted into vaccination centers and so on. The role of the private sector becomes very, very important in the distribution and access to medicines. And in Ghana, some study that has been done by the Pharmacy Council indicates that about 70% of all community pharmacies are found in Accra and Kumasi. And therefore, the opportunity exists out there to set up a sort of a franchising system for private sector involvement in access to medicines, and also so that people living everywhere in the country can have access. And when there are some public health interventions that require the use of these facilities, everybody everywhere would have access to use. So, John, I think I'll end here and maybe wait for the subsequent discussions on the matter. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Ben. I think you touched on what I think would be mouth-watering prospects, which are business opportunities. Maybe I missed more than that, but you talked about having a facility for assessment of biosimilars and how that would be attractive not only in Ghana, but to the entire sub-region. And you talked about a possible franchising system to improve access to medications. I think these are really brilliant opportunities that you have really put out there as almost like a free consulting that you provided on this platform. And with that, I really would like Mrs. Patricia Ekuba Odoi to comment. And she is the founder and manager of 3MNC Health Systems, which is a registered Ghanaian company, received undergraduate training in healthcare administration from Columbia Union College, Tacoma Park, and a master in science in healthcare administration from the University of Maryland. So extensive experience in the sector. So based on that and what Dr. Nsiah touched on and what Ben also just made mention of, where do you see the role of the private sector in being able to seize some of these business opportunities, particularly between Ghana and Germany, maybe with specific emphasis on the production of consumables within the sub-region, PPE like gloves, nose masks, and syringes and the like, for which we know that the German technology is highly reliable. I work in the research industry, and maybe sad to say we end up always importing a lot of our consumables all the way from Germany. It would be nice to see how we could partner with German industry to produce them right here in Ghana. Mrs. Ekuba Odoi Atsem, floor is yours. Ekuba, I'm not sure if you're there, but
can you hear me now?
You're there now. Sounds good. Yeah, please go ahead.
Great. Thanks so much for inviting me. Coming strictly from a private sector, and I guess I'm going to write on the back of Dr. Yao Jemfi. All the government ideas and all the government opportunities that are coming up sounds really great. But if we don't harness our human resources and really train the folks who are actually going to use all these opportunities that are coming up, we're still going to end up where we started from. Having the German government trying to introduce government companies or German companies that are willing to do businesses with us. It sounds really great. But we're looking forward to companies that will come in with the technologies and the education that would help us help ourselves. That means that we need the human resources. We put up a couple of buildings. We have a lot of technology. We have a lot of things in Ghana, but we don't have the human resources to use what we have. So coming from a private sector perspective, what I'm trying to ask for, or what I'm really looking forward to, or as you put it, the opportunities that I'm looking forward to. So start harnessing our human resources. And we should also look for companies that are willing to come to Ghana to work with us at the grassroots. That means come and establish industries that will produce most of the things that we need. Let's manufacture what we need right here instead of trying to import everything that we need. I mean, something so basic as a face mask had to be imported in numbers, and it cost a lot of money just trying to get it into Ghana when we needed it because of COVID-19. But if we had such basic industries, I'm sure we would have been able to use it and even if been able to help the sub-region. Opportunities that have been laid at our doorstep. But what are we as the private sector trying to do? And I'm asking the government to help pull us all together. We, the private sectors, have to come together in groups and then look for partners in Germany that are willing to work with us. Come down, give us the knowledge that you have, bring what you have. I'm sure that when you bring your knowledge, you're also going to acquire some kind of knowledge from us. And if we work together and establish some industries here in Ghana where we can manufacture and supply our own needs, that would also help us, to be able to use whatever resources we have. So, I mean, as soon as the government puts up this Agenda 111 and it's running, we should be able to supply our own items. We should be able to supply our own needs. We should be able to support and at least give some services that we don't have to go out there to try to import everything that we need in this country, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's devices, whether it's basic consumables. Something has to give where we start manufacturing on our own. And harnessing our human resource. A lot of us are educated, but we're educated in theory. We're educated in the textbooks or to the things that we've read or things that we think should happen. But how do we put into practice what we really have learned? And how do we use that to improve on what we already have? So this is strictly a private sector way of. I really appreciate everything that the government is saying. And I appreciate the German government trying to come in to try to help us. But we're not looking for folks to come and sell things to us. We're looking for folks to come in, work with us from the grassroots, help us establish industries that will help support all the agendas that the government has. That's the point that I like to make. Thank you.
No, so thank you very much, Ekuba, for that. I think it's a really good way of transitioning into my next set of questions, which would border around sort of the manpower which would take advantage of these business opportunities to really operationalize them. And I'm just going to engage Professor McBangonluri as well as Prof. Abraham Annang from Noguchi on these. Prof. McBangonluri was born in East Legon. He is actually the president and provost of the Academic City University College, founding dean of engineering at Ashesi University. Prior to his appointment, he was vice president of new product development at Jones Healthcare, Arlington, Texas, and held roles of increasing responsibility for Fortune 500 companies in the US. So really this, great mix of academia as well as industry under his belt. And he continues to train others. And this is where I'd like to ask you very directly, Prof. McBangonluri, given the interventions by Ben and also Ekuba, where do you see the role of academia in being able to help us take advantage of these business opportunities? And not just the role of academia, but where do you see the German Ghanaian cooperation coming in to be able to push and advance industry?
Yeah. So thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, thanks for the opportunity. I'm really excited to be a part of this panel of distinguished individuals. holding conversations, certainly around the things that keeps my pulse going. So I appreciate the opportunity to make a contribution to that. So as you alluded, I mean, I spent 16 years of my life in the medical devices industry. I started my career with Siemens, where I worked for 7 years, focused on early stage technologies. And I'm actually happy to report that my team was the first to use 3D printed technology to actually make a consumable medical device, which was hearing aids. And that technology is certainly relevant to this conversation because in the areas of 3D printing, 3D scanning, and 3D modeling, you can essentially design stuff in any part of the world and have them made locally. So I call that kind of technology democratization of industry type technologies. And then I spent about 4 years at Becton and Dickinson, leading the world's largest injection systems group. And as you indicated, my last station in the US before I transitioned was at Johns Healthcare, where I focused mostly on medical equipment. So hospital beds across that sector, from acute care to hospice and therapeutic services. And it's always interesting to see some of my products still in the marketplace. So what I brought to academia was basically how do you take ideas and make them relevant to society? How do you make an immediate impact? And I think the medical devices space remains one of these core areas of applied technology where results are instantaneous. You can see things happen in real time. One of the intriguing part of my journey through industry when I was at Siemens was the close collaborations that we had with University of Erlangen. And with the exception of the United States, I probably spent more time in Germany than in any other place in the world. And to see these graduates transition from the university system into Siemens seamlessly was quite interesting. They were hands-on, they were practical, they work on projects which transition directly into industry and into products that made immediate impact for people. We designed technologies where you could sit in Denmark and order a hearing instrument, and it will be designed in China, manufactured in Singapore, and shipped to you in less than a week. And so there's a lot out there that lends itself to our environment. And I think what I see here is a couple of things. There's a clear absence of an effective healthcare ecosystem. There is also the prevailing notion that there is no intersection between industry and academia. I see academia actually making an effort to reach industry. Industry hasn't found value in academia yet. And I may be biased because I'm coming from the academic side, but there is no pull from industry. And so, when I worked on 3D technologies at Siemens, we use universities to develop our software systems. We use private companies like Mitsubishi to design our scanners. We use private companies like Adidas to master the 3D printing technology, which they were using for several years for rapid prototyping. And so there were these learnings and these direct engagements. And then the lessons that we learned at Siemens Healthcare, we shared them with Siemens Energy. So there was clearly an ecosystem where knowledge flew around quite freely. What I see here in academia is that people tend to hack knowledge and hold it so tightly. And there is inexperience around product development. So oftentimes you see people developing products, and for years, they never really come to the point where they would say, this is the first cut of my product. And so what I've been trying to do with my students here is to say, look, your biggest enemy in product development is perfection. Good enough is a good starting point. And then you can begin to develop this cadence of technologies similar to what Apple has been able to do with their products up to the 12 version. And so I think where the clear intersection is for those of us in academia is to practicalize the education that we have, to help the kids understand that having a piece of paper is not an end in itself, and that you need to be able to build products, deliver products, identify opportunities in society where you can make an immediate impact. And then on the academia side, on the policy side, we are continuously pushing the policymakers to understand that defining a syllabi and compelling institutions to live by those syllabi is not enough. The syllabi has to be practicalized. The syllabi is simply a boundary condition. And signing up to that contract and trying to finish a syllabus is not necessarily translate into the outcomes that we anticipate. And so if you look across the whole educational stream, it is so fully theoretical. Most students come in and they don't even know what the knowledge that they are being taught is used for. They don't know the value of it. And so we have a lot of people that are educated, they have certificates, and that knowledge is pretty much locked out. That knowledge cannot translate into anything meaningful. And so what I try to do here with my team, similar to what we did at Asare University, is that there has to be a strong project component. It has to be a project-driven type education. And
Prof. McBangonluri, we can't hear you. I don't know if you're muted by mistake or there might be a tech challenge somewhere.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, somebody was trying to call me in.
That's all right.
So I really think that what is relevant to this discussion is that we should also focus on technology transfer. But we should focus on the practical realities of our environment, that technologies do not just transfer and integrate. We have to understand the energy challenges we have in the sub-region. We need to understand the cost challenges that we have. So we have to strip things down to the bare minimum. We need to understand, we need to streamline design. So aspects of what we transfer has to take into consideration sustainability, has to take into consideration cost, and has to take into consideration the practical realities that we have in this environment in terms of transportation and energy needs. So that's kind of what I've been trying to do here for the last 6 years. Basically try to establish this relevance and also working with government institutions. I work very closely with Ghana Standards Authority because the regulatory framework also provides opportunities to do a lot of innovation. And so, what academia ought to do is to make itself more relevant, but I also challenge industry to challenge academia, because until there is this duality, this bidirectional relationship between these two entities, with each benefiting directly from it, until we cannot establish that, we'll not be able to see what I saw in Erlangen, University of Erlangen and Siemens, and many, many other entities that continue to engage academia in Germany. So I'll pause here.
Well, thank you very much, Professor McBangonluri, for again re-emphasizing the need for the human capacity to be able to take full advantage of these business opportunities in the Ghanaian health sector. And on that, I'd still want to come to you, Professor Abraham Annang. You're the director at Noguchi with extensive experience in research and biomedical research for that matter. Research and academia go hand in hand, and research is where we ask the questions and we seek the answers, solve problems. It must be connected to industry. Of course, you often hear leading companies having R&D units, and I've been fortunate to be part of interfacing with the R&D units of some leading companies globally, including companies in Germany. I'd like to find out from you, from where you sit, where you think at Noguchi or the research platforms or a community in Ghana could interface more with the business community to provide opportunities to them. Of course, more often than not, R&D is cost intensive. R&D doesn't necessarily make the money. It provides opportunities to make the money, and R&D is expensive. We all know what goes into drug discovery and drug manufacturing. In fact, it's only very recently with COVID that we've moved so quickly from being able to discover a vaccine to producing it to really deploying it. This hitherto had been unprecedented. But where do you see the role of the Ghanaian research community in improving the business opportunities in the Ghanaian healthcare sector for German and Ghanaian actors?
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be on board this platform, and it's been an interesting discussion already. My greetings to everybody and also the audience. Really, research and development is a critical thing for socioeconomic advancement. Those of us in the pure core research, areas, one of the key observations we have made is that before COVID-19, the world was already making various efforts through visions like the Millennium Development Goals, which is already ended, and now we have the Sustainable Development Goals. And we can see that the way the SDGs are structured, and you look at the last goal, 17, it says something that COVID has revealed to us is a very, very important thing. It says partnerships for the goals. Before COVID-19, it wasn't very clear what partnerships for the goals means. But since COVID-19, even those of us in research, Noguchi, for example, in testing for COVID, the kind of partnership that has emerged, the collaboration, the contributions from the private sector, from the government itself, and from individuals, has from banks and name it what, has revealed to us that the way forward to be able to build a strong research and development platform across board in all sectors is innovative partnerships. And these partnerships must be structured such that the partnerships are integrated. So we should be looking at how we are getting German companies on board, working with research in institutions, in universities, in teaching hospitals, name it what, various areas, including even the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR. But it will still be a very incomplete job if we just look at German companies. We should be looking at it in an integrated manner, in which case we are looking at Ghanaian companies and German companies together. So I can see a future post-COVID that will be successful, in which a research institute like Noguchi has a program which is going on that can maybe churn up some research and development innovation that could even be developed into proof of concept prototypes that can go to the level of intellectual property and commercialization. But for this to happen, we should be looking at a situation where we have relationships and interactions or partnerships with Ghanaian company working with Noguchi, German companies working with Noguchi. Now, if we are able to do it that way, to become a win-win for all. And so you look at what has been presented previously by my colleagues, Dr. Nsiah, Asare, Patricia, and others, we will obviously are going to see a phasing out kind of experience. I say a phasing out experience because initially, take Agenda 111, government rolling out these infrastructure, and then obviously you will have to equip these infrastructure with products, with consumables, with equipment, with materials, with reagents, and not everything can initially come from Ghana. So obviously, We need partners like German companies to be able to fill in the gap. And I remember Ben's presentation saying that for the pharmaceuticals, we are producing about up to 30% or a little plus. So what about the 70%, you know, that kind of thing. So we need to be able to build a new kind of relationship and partnership. That's the first most important thing. The other thing then is that through these partnerships, we should then be able to develop the various trusts that are needed for successful research and development. One of them is the workforce. We need technology transfer. We need enhanced training. We need workforce to be exposed and experienced to some of the fundamentals of best practices in research and in industry. Like talking about the ISO, the accreditations, the good laboratory practices, the good manufacturing practices. We're talking about quality management systems. It should begin from the schools, and we should be able to begin to bring these things together in a way that the future can then be assured. And as you said also, moderator, research and development is expensive. And one of the things that the partnerships we are looking for post-COVID must do is creating innovative financing. Already in Ghana, a lot is being done by government. Government is in the process of rolling out a national research fund and all that. But we need more funding for research. So these are my early comments.
Well, thank you very much for that, Professor Annang. I think it's really insightful, especially your last comments on the need for innovative financing. And I'd like to just touch also on the aspect of research itself as providing knowledge for business or driving business, informing the opportunities. Research is needed to explore the opportunities to find out whether they are really viable or not. You need the proofs of concepts. You need to produce the prototypes and then test them. So there is the research itself, and then there is the business of research. And more often than not, researchers forget about the business of research, which is really the backbone of managing the research infrastructure, the research setup. And this is where I want to bring in Dr. Adjabu. You are a well-seasoned, qualified medical practitioner and clinical biomedical engineer. You are the head of biomedical engineering at the Ministry of Health and the former deputy director there. And so you would know from a very personal perspective how this comes into play, both because of your experience with biomedical engineering and in the healthcare sector. So where do you see the business opportunities with sort of the business of research, particularly in the biomedical devices sector for Ghana? And if you can sort of relate this with the Agenda 111 and where German business could collaborate with Ghanaian business. Dr. Adjabu.
All right, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you all. Thank you for inviting me to this program to share some of the things that we have been thinking and working towards. Biomedical engineering field that is supporting the advancement of healthcare in the whole world, and Ghana is not an exception. For Ghana health industry to grow, we need capable engineers to support such growth. In the Ministry of Health, Ghana Health Service, and the entire country, we are lucky to have the universities and academic institutions rolling out the biomedical engineering programs. And once engineers are being out and getting into the real world, we need to have their knowledge that has been acquired in the academic institution transformed into the industrial or the real world. As earlier speakers in the university program. Certainly the academic knowledge is there, but you need someone to also guide you and help you to develop the skills that you will require to support industrial development in the country. In Ghana, biomedical engineering has come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And WHO made some publication some time ago that most medical devices or equipment that are found in the developing countries do not work. And they don't work because either the person to use it doesn't have the required knowledge and skills to use it, or even if they are well used, when there is a problem, the engineer to support repair or restore it to functional state is also not there. Sometimes, even when being used, we need to make sure that whatever the device has been developed to do is really what it's doing. So the intended use, the effectiveness of the device has to be achieved. So if we don't train our engineers well, it means we'll have engineers on one hand, and then we'll have the devices, but the two cannot be pulled together. So we at the Ministry of Health are looking at a structured program that can transform our engineers that are coming out of our universities to have a place where they can develop their skills better and pursue their dreams to support industrial development. At the end of the day, as our president has put on the agenda, that every district must have at least a factory. We are also looking at certain future, at least should be able to develop that we require. If not all, the basic ones, we should be able to develop them. If we're going to establish an industrial park to support such an idea, we will need people who will carry out this. So our aim is to have a center where the engineers can go there and learn what they want to learn, to develop their skills, to develop their knowledge further, and enhance the practical skills that they have. So we are looking at a situation where we can set up a center where we will have laboratories, we'll have skills, the resources that is required to support hands-on training. We'll have the skills to equipment, we'll have skills to design, we'll have we'll have the skills to and so on. Even looking at certification, now there are acts that are applicable to health professionals. And if we have to embark on certification of our engineers, certainly they will need the support where they can enhance their skills before they could be certified as professionals to practice biomedical engineering. So all these things are the things that we are thinking about, and I believe collaboration between German government, German companies, and Ghana government and Ghana organizations firms could help in this direction. And I believe there is an opportunity in this area if we put our hands together. There is a lot that we can establish. Looking at manufacturing all the way to the use and maintenance of all the equipment, the labs to test and all the things that are required. So thank you very much. I will end it here. If there is any follow-ups, I will add on. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for that, Dr. Adjabu. You make really important points on the need to have the engineers who are adequately trained with the right kind of certification, and not only just focused on one thing, but broadly enough so they can apply their skills with the in-depth knowledge to the different technologies that will be coming into the country, and hopefully also to develop some ourselves. It dovetails well with the Agenda 111 and also some of the points that Ben had made earlier. And I'm coming back to you, Mr. Botwe, based on what Dr. Adjabu has just talked about. And I want to just be a bit provocative here. Just looking at the example of the German company, car manufacturer Volkswagen, setting up a production facility right here in Ghana. I like to believe that there was a process of preparing the engineers and people who will be working at the plants. I don't have knowledge in car manufacturing assembly, but I know it's a very precise activity which requires, a certain global standard of training which cannot be compromised. And the cars that are produced here will meet these global, or do meet these global standards. So how can we translate this way in which the auto industry in Germany has been able to now operate in Ghana? How can we translate this to the pharmaceutical manufacturing sector, to the biomedical sector, to the management of healthcare facilities sector? And I'd like to ask you, Ben, what are your thoughts on how we can translate what the German auto industry has been able to do with Ghana, in Ghana, to the pharmaceutical biomedical industry, Ben?
Yeah. Thank you very much, and that is very interesting. With all the standards that one has to comply to or with in the pharma industry, you need a very strong, a very well and capable workforce in those areas. And I think Prof. Annang mentioned some of them in quality management systems, in quality assurance, in quality control, in production itself, and even in marketing you need. And one critical area also is maintenance of manufacturing equipment, which is also a huge gap. I know for sure it has happened before that some of our senior colleagues had sort of an apprenticeship attachment in German companies and came back, and today if you are looking for some of the best pharmaceutical manufacturing chemists and pharmacists, they are basically German trained. So I don't think it's a new thing. The transfer of that technology and skills is something that can be done, and as has been done in the auto industry, it can be done here at same. We have, I think some of our colleagues have already alluded to it, that we have very trained people, well-trained people. What is needed is a skill set additions that we need to look at, and we can sort of disaggregate them into the core technical areas, the supporting engineering component of it, and then also the information technology infrastructure also to support this. And I believe Germany stands in a very good position to be able to partner with local academic and consultancy institutions, as well as the manufacturers themselves, to be able to transfer these type of skills so that we can move on. Another area is also contract manufacturing. If turnkey or greenfield facilities would take a longer time or be a long-term plan, then we can look at the capacity of existing industries and also do contract manufacturing with the appropriate technology to support them to be able to comply with all these international standards. So these are my few comments on this moving forward.
No, thank you very much, Ben. And it actually leads me to you, Dr. Nsiah, because a lot of the things that have been touched on by the panelists so far, including what Ben just spoke about, would require a lot of enablement from government, because it's not just about identifying the business opportunities or unearthing them, but also being able to take advantage of them. There are many companies that do identify the business opportunities. They're able to write reports and say, okay, we see this as something that is viable, something that is possible, but having the door fully opened, or the platform on which to fully exercise themselves sometimes is not very easy. So where do you see a government coming in, whether it's under the African Free Trade Agreement or Agenda 111, to improve these business opportunities within the healthcare sector for Ghana, Germany business? Is it going to be in direct bilateral agreements between Germany and Ghana, which businesses can take advantage of in the healthcare sector? I also want you to touch on one very important thing, which is the protection of Ghanaian businesses within some of these relationships, because of the power dynamics that exist within there, and automatically government's responsibility for making sure that Ghanaian industry interest is also protected. I just want you to expand the gamut of the points I've touched on. Nsiah.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. If you remember, one of the 6 thematic or key objectives of government in solving the pandemic is to improve on domestic capacity and let Ghana become self-reliant and self-sufficient. So government wants to increase the domestic capacity of all sectors to deal with the existing and future shocks in line with Ghana Beyond the 8. And also government is also working with private sector to increase domestic production, especially, I think you saw it when the COVID pandemic started initially, where all of a sudden, within a matter of a month, we were able to produce our own sanitizers. The sanitizers became very cheap, and we could even export it across the sub-region. And also, we were able to produce our own PPEs, very stylish PPEs, which are now being even exported outside the country, and then medical and then IPC materials. So this is one of the aims of government, that you want to give enabling environment for pharmaceutical companies, but government met the pharmaceutical companies, both private and then also the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana, and challenge them that we need to have hand sanitizer and hand washing and the use of PPE. So government challenge them, government give them enabling environment, and within a matter of days or a week, we had about 34 companies which turned some of their plants into manufacturing of sanitizers. That's the beauty of Ghanaian. That is what we saw. And government is very much keen in doing that to protect the Ghana private industry, and also to bring in a lot of investors to partner the private sector in the form of partnership. We don't want it to be, it should be a collaboration, not just the German companies coming to take over the business of Ghanaians. And because of African free trade that we have here as the headquarters, we now have a big capacity to also produce for the whole of the sub-Saharan or African sub-region. And this is the aim that the government is trying to do. One, it's going to improve on our economy, the social life of the people, to create jobs, and also bring in a direct foreign exchange into the country, instead of taking the money out to buy a lot of things. So in the Agenda 111, what government has done is that most of the construction of the district hospitals will be done by local contractors and maybe foreign contractors who are already in country. The original ones also by foreign contractors, but with local content. And the equipment and the others are also, if we have any Ghanaian firm which can produce equipment. In fact, when we started this Agenda 111, that's what we have realized, that there's even a company in Ghana who is producing hospital furniture, including beds, some of them electronic, and then manual, and then some of them just by way of using manual to push them up. Not only hospital beds, but hospital beds, theater beds. I've seen their courts and all this, and they are in Kumasi. Beautiful. They produce everything, including the furniture in hospital offices and the rest. So Ghanaian firms are now coming out to show us that if you give us the enabling environment, we can also produce, we can also work. but they need also the support from outside, especially in terms of equipment and also in terms of capacity building for people to work in these factories and firms. And this is what we are asking the German Trade and Chamber to try and come in. And there's a lot of opportunities here in the country, and they have to partner and collaborate with Ghanaian businessmen. And government will always be there to give the enabling environment and make sure that Ghanaian industries are also saved, and then they are not just what the big farmers do. So another way that we also want to bring in this collaboration and also make Ghanaian firms, especially pharmaceutical firms, to set up is, as Ben said, we need to have a bioequivalence lab in the country so that we can go into vaccine production. And we spoke about it this morning, that in the vaccine production, we need to build our research and development. We need to build scientists. We need to build people who will be challenged to develop whatever we have. For all we care, maybe we have something in our heads that we have not even touched. And this can all come out if there's very good research and very good labs that people can go to and learn and then come back and set up systems like that. And I'm happy that the German government, through the embassy and the GIZ, is trying to link up with us, link up with the committee, which I happen to be a member of, Professor Botwe as the chairperson, and Dr. Nsiah and the rest are all part of the committee. We are working very closely together with any organization who is prepared to work with us to come out with the blueprints. And then at least the government's aim is that at least there should be one vaccine manufacturing or production unit in Ghana before 2024. And this is how we are working towards that, to achieve that. I think in all, this fits very well into the domestic capacity and self-reliance strategic agenda in our 6-point strategic agenda for pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. But the vaccine production is not only for COVID-19 vaccines. We want to produce at least all the 13 EPI vaccines that we use in this country, including the HPV vaccines that we want to also introduce and give to young girls and young boys. So this is the aim, and the business opportunity is very, very huge, and the investment opportunity is also huge in Ghana. That's the reason why I'm very happy that this is happening at the right time, so that we work together with the German firms and organizations to bring the necessary capacity into the country, the necessary know-how, the necessary machinery, which Ghanaians can work on and Ghanaians can develop it further. This is what we want to do. I'll end here and wait for other questions. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Hello.
Hello, John.
Yeah, John, I'll finish. I'll end here for the meantime. Let's move on.
It looks like we have lost him.
I'm still on.
No, I think it looks like we have lost John.
Professor Asare, yes, thank you very much for that. The line was a bit choppy towards the end. I hope you can still hear me.
Yeah, you didn't hear me at the end.
But I believe you were focusing a lot on the capacity to produce vaccines, not only for COVID-19, but also for other vaccine preventable diseases. Of course, beyond the production of these vaccines would also have to be how they are deployed and the ability to really uptake them, for which, of course, there is a continued need for research and development. And this is where I want to come again to you, Prof. McBangonluri, particularly within the area of R&D and how R&D really interfaces with education or academia, and for that matter, specifically the private sector. You're with the Academic City University, you were hitherto with Ashesi. These are both private universities. But how do you see the way in which the private sector, particularly in Germany, can work with academia, and this time private sector academia in Ghana, to unearth the business opportunities? So how can German industry, German academia work with Ghanaian academia, especially private academia, to unearth these business of these industries which government is looking to set up?
Yeah. So thank you very much for that. So look, I think that private universities in Ghana have been quite a recent phenomenon, maybe in the last 20, 25 years. And when I look at how they have rapidly evolved and are beginning to establish themselves as a force to reckon with, I think there's so many opportunities to collaborate with us. There's much more agility working with private universities, obviously more than the established public universities, obviously because of inertia. So when I look at an institution like Ashesi, for instance, is beginning to produce a new group of graduates that HR practitioners are speaking so highly of. And I haven't spoken about mine directly because I'll graduate my first class here at Academic City next year. So I think reconfiguring people for the workforce, the discipline, the timeliness, the leadership, the determination to make an impact, I see that with this new set of graduates. I also see an opportunity for training. It could be a center for excellence in training, whether it's in CNC, whether it's in modeling, whether it's in 3D printing. I see a lot of opportunities in some of these neglected diseases in our region. Obviously, we got COVID vaccines on time under a year because it affects everybody. But we still have a lot of diseases in this region, hepatitis among others, tuberculosis, that needs strong research support to address these issues locally. I think there are opportunities there to partner with private universities. Private universities are financially challenged. Obviously, we run based on the income that we generate from fees. Public universities, on the other hand, gets lots of government subvention, especially for teachers, among other things. So, getting us access to equipment, it's one way that we can support. I've spoken to some folks in Berlin that want to set up a carpentering shop here at Academic City College. So look, I think that looking at us as strategic partners in training, looking at us as strategic partners in research and development are critical. One other thing that I would like to add, coming from industry, is that often when we talk about technology and technology transfer, we only focus on the physical technology itself. But what really takes technology to internalize is the leadership that comes with it. We don't have any universities in Ghana today that offers a program in STEM MBA, for instance, and training people on how to lead technical organizations, training people in how to lead and manage innovation. And these are some gaps in our tertiary infrastructure itself. If you read the history of Sloan MIT, where I did my MBA, essentially Alfred Sloan, who was a graduate of MIT, went to MIT and said, I have a problem. I realized that anytime I take my best engineers and turn them into managers, they fail. And I need an answer to that. So being a brilliant manager doesn't necessarily, being a brilliant scientist or engineer doesn't necessarily translate into being a brilliant technical manager. And that is really the beginning of the Sloan MIT program. That is still the oldest MBA program in the world. So I think there are these opportunities where we can specialize in offering these kinds of training, whether for the pharmaceutical industry, the devices, the equipment, the diagnostics industry. You still need a certain level of technical leadership that doesn't necessarily come because somebody has a degree in biomedical or pharmaceutical for that matter. You need to tool them to function in that environment. So training is good. Maintenance, I mean, on my recent visit to Kolebu, at the peak of COVID crisis, everybody was arguing that we only had 67. Others said we had more. But what I saw at Kolebu were a lot of, what do you call it, ventilators that were not functional, which means that we don't have the capable technical support to actually bring them to life. And every equipment has a lifespan. You need to be able to maintain it and fix it. You can't just continue to keep buying them. So I think this is really the segue where we can work closely with German equipment. I have one more point to make. I alluded to it earlier, that oftentimes designing equipment for the developing world doesn't take into reality the practical realities on the ground here in the developing world. And so working with German companies and working with German universities to actually customize some of these devices for our environment could be crucial, because we lack energy. And if you have an equipment that depends entirely on electricity, it's going to be difficult for it to function here. We have challenges moving equipment around. So maybe it's not the huge CT equipment that we need or the ultrasound machine that we need, but we need to Africanize these technologies for agility. So this is where I think that we can effectively collaborate with German institutions and industries.
No, great points, Prof. McBangonluri, and really exciting things you touched on. What really caught my attention was the STEM MBA, and I think it speaks to what I was making reference to, which is trying to understand the business of research and what really goes into being able to manage a research that would feed the business community. And I'd like to, with that, turn to you, Ekuba, especially given your extensive experience as a healthcare admin in the US and then now founding your own company here in Ghana. Where do you see the German corporation or industry coming to support with just the management capacity to be able to sustain or to set up and sustain the business within the healthcare sector in Ghana, and particularly because it would be those who are within the setup, the Ghanaians themselves, who understand best to provide, as Prof. McBangonluri put it, to Africanize the base technology and to think of new ideas which can be applied locally. So this is where the need of partnership comes in, but there needs to be the training to be able to operate at that level. So where do you see very specifically the roles in which German corporation could play in this area?
Thanks again. If there are any German companies or corporations that have a background in healthcare administration, and when I talk about healthcare administration, it's just not just a matter of just managing the healthcare systems, but actually giving our folks like practical experiences in how the healthcare system works. I'll just give you a little background about how I was trained. I was trained in the state of Maryland, where I had an opportunity to work as a maintenance manager for like a month, work as a janitor for a month, work as a nursing assistant for a month, work as a dietitian for a month. Because if I was going to manage a nursing home, then I needed to understand how all the systems in a nursing home comes to play a role in the care of a patient. So it wasn't just sitting in an office and just signing off papers and giving instructions, but how does all the systems in the facility come together in the care of a patient? So if we have any German companies or corporations that have the experience or the knowledge or the know-how that they can bring to us to help us in managing our healthcare systems here, we need them to really come in and start, like I mentioned earlier, start from scratch, how to train our folks to understand the care that we need for our patients, the care that we need for our clients. Let's start from the grassroots. And like the previous professor just mentioned, let's Africanize it. There's nothing like understanding our systems and what works best for us in our environment. And how do we use what we have to make it work in this environment? And the best way to use it, that you bring the knowledge, the skill that you have. I'll bring the knowledge, the skill that I have here. Let's put it together and see how best can we use that to make the system that we have work. We have Agenda 111 coming, which is great. But how do we make it work in the best interest of the people who are actually going to use the service? We have a lot of patients who can go to a facility and cannot even express themselves because the doctor may want to speak in English and the patient cannot express what is wrong with them in English. So can the doctor be able to have them address what they need to, what's wrong with them in a language that they're comfortable with? And how best can we explain to the patient what they also need to hear in the language that they understand? And how best do we use what we have, whatever resources we have here? So I'm looking forward to companies and corporations that are going to come into this environment and help us use what we have. The industries, whatever industry it is, whether it's pharma, whether it's medical devices, whether it's research, come in with what you have. Let's also bring what we have to the table and let's put it together to make it work so it becomes a win-win situation for all across the board. And I'm hoping that everybody listening and everybody who's going to come on board on this program would be willing to roll up their sleeves and let's use whatever we have. The private sector, we are ready anytime to put in the best that we have. We have a lot of private sector folks who are small businesses but don't have the capacity to really come out and bid for these big contracts that the government is going to put out there because we don't have the financial capacity to bid for it. So most of the time we see foreign companies coming in to bid for it, but if they can come and work with us as partners to help to bid for these contracts, then I can use the knowledge that I've acquired and my local knowledge of what we need, and they can bring the foreign skill together and we can help improve the health system and everything else that we have in this country. That's a little bit that I have to add to that.
Thank you very much for that, Ekuba. And as we wrap up, we've just got a few minutes more. If just crave your indulgence, I'll borrow 3 more minutes just to dive into this whole concept of Africanization of some of these biomedical technologies. I'd like Dr. Adjabu and Prof. Annang to comment on these as we wrap up. So Dr. Adjabu, a lot of these technologies would have to find very specific applications in our part of the world. And not only that, but they would have to be modified sometimes to suit our unique environments. We're already hearing of vaccines, and we really need, heat stable vaccines and others which will be more conducive to our situations and our terrains without necessarily lowering the standards or the efficacy of these vaccines. The same applies to many of the biomedical technologies. So what do you think should be done better between German and Ghanaian businesses? And obviously the Ghanaian businesses would have to take the lead when it comes to the Africanization. But how do you think we could really work this out here in Ghana with our German counterparts? In just about 2 minutes, please.
All right, thank you very much. Well, looking at the technologies that we import, they are normally designed for the country where they are manufactured and produce them to meet the standards that are required there. And most of the time, these standards are very high to ensure that the medical device is effective. Unfortunately, in Ghana, we have certain peculiar problems ranging from the poor quality of our energy that is supplied, and most of these things have to run on energy, especially electricity. And where there is a lot of fluctuations in the supply of electricity, that certainly the device that has been designed to run on a very good quality electricity supply will definitely suffer. And this has been one of the major problems. And I think looking at the consumer industry, there's a lot that has been done. You take certain devices, they are able to run on our power systems with less problems. Unfortunately, when it comes to medical devices, because of the high requirements in terms of regulation, the sort of power supply units that are installed are not able to withstand the level of fluctuations we have here. And most of the time, you will find that these equipment are not able to cope with our environment. There are other problems which we've talked about a lot, ranging from the skills that are required to maintain this to the industrial practices that sometimes restrict the engineers, even if they are trained, to also have free hand to work on this. And I think for us to move forward, we need to have a close link with the companies that manufacture, with the industrial communities in Germany, and identify some of these key areas and find solutions to them, and also help transfer skills, and not only skills, but also to authorize them where necessary to also have the free hand to work on some of this equipment. Because if we have to rely on importing the service engineers from Germany, for example, each time they come, the bill will not only be the repair, but we also have to pay for their flight and their hotels and all those things. And this makes the device very expensive, even though the services that are being rendered are the same as in Germany. But you realize that though the cost of healthcare delivery in Ghana is supposed to be much cheaper, the use of the devices rather comes with high operational costs, maintenance cost, and that's difficult for health institutions to afford. So I think we need to work closely together to identify the unique problems we have here and resolve them. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for that, Dr. Adjabu. And just in concluding this session, as I said, I'll just borrow 2 extra minutes, maybe 3, to have you, Professor Annang, just address this more from a research perspective. And in research, we tend to use a lot of biomedical equipment. A lot of it tends to be rather high-end, not the kind that you would use in large quantities because it is research. Now, where do you see how the German healthcare industry could partner with Ghana, specifically the research community? Maybe the business model may be a bit tricky because it would require some economies of scale. But thankfully, now that the government is intending to have more research institutions with the Ghana CDC and so on, do you think that this could perhaps improve the viability of companies, Ghana, German companies that would provide equipment and services within the research sector?
Yes, really, there will be a lot of improvement and opportunity. And when I made my earlier comments, I mentioned, for example, the phasing of the interactions. So at the beginning, for example, you remember Dr. Nsiah mentioned bulk procurement. We will have to procure lots of supplies and name it what, various reagents and materials. And initially, you wouldn't just have been able to establish Germans helping Ghanaians to establish all the companies to manufacture everything. Besides that, from global practice, we all know that global trade has shown us no country can produce everything that it needs. So we have to be able to come together and identify where the true opportunities are for a win-win situation for Ghana, Germany in this relationship. And if we identify them well and we roll them out, it will be very attractive and an incentive and inducing to all of us. One point that I would like to make is that we need to look at our education system in Ghana again. Some time back, we had the polytechnics, which have now become technical universities, which is a very good thing. Germany is a very strong manufacturing country also because technology is put in the right perspective. And we need to look at our technical universities, train technologists, even up to the professor level, and work with scientists and other parties in industry, in institutions, in name it what, teaching hospitals. We need to do this in the biomedical, research arena. We need to do this so that we are able to create a true partnership relationship with German professionals and German companies. When we do that, technology transfer will become a true reality. And then we have to also remember that when it comes to research, one thing should never escape us, that health, even of human health, is a one health issue, which means that it is human and veterinary health and environmental health. So everything that we have discussed, we need to bring it back into context of one health. And even if we talk of vaccines for human diseases, what about the animal diseases? Because we ignore them, and then we have another, COVID, name it 3 or 4 or 5. So these are some of the key things we need to look at, and I believe that we can be able to interrelate and make it work. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Prof. Annang. The really exciting comments you made, particularly on the technical universities, and definitely Germany is a leader here. Many of us do collaborate with various technical universities in Germany, Technical University of Berlin, or Munich, and several others that exist. And also what you mentioned about the One Health approach, which for me personally is really exciting. I happen to co-chair the Lancet One Health Commission together with a colleague, the Technical University of Munich, interestingly. We're hoping that our Lancet Commission report, which is being eagerly looked forward to, will come out early next year. I know the German government also is very intent on a One Health approach and has set up a One Health office, which some of us provide direct advice to. So really interesting points that you pointed out, that you made. There's one thing I took away from this particular panel. It has been the fact that to really unearth these business opportunities in the Ghanaian healthcare sector, it would take the human infrastructure. I think this is one note that resounded across all the submissions from the panelists, whom I'd like to thank profusely for taking the time to really dive into these. I must remind you that this event is organized in cooperation with the Special Initiative on Training and Job Creation, which is an initiative of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ, and it operates under the brand Invest for Jobs, and it's implemented, among others, by the GIZ. We're going to take a break for a little less than an hour, now short of 10 minutes, so 15 minutes, and we'll come in for the last session at exactly 2:30 Ghana time, which I believe will now be 4:30 in Germany. So 2:30 Ghana time, 4:30 Germany, where we'll discuss the last bit, which is partnerships in healthcare, and trying to see how we can make Ghana an attractive destination for German businesses. And we'll be addressing issues, especially around the financing and the practical market entry strategies and so on. I must remind you that we have the exhibition hall, the virtual exhibition hall, where we have up to 36 exhibitors from Ghana and Germany. Please do well to visit these booths and learn as much as you can about what is going on, and also know what the possibilities are. So we come back at 2:30 Ghana time, 4:30 German time, and we will wrap up from there. So once again, thank you very much to the panelists. I'd like to hand over to Richard if there are any housekeeping issues.
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Dr. Moisi, and thank you everyone for joining. From our side again, please, we would like you to visit the exhibition halls. We have at the moment 36 companies exhibiting from Germany and in Ghana. Please visit their booths, see what they are showcasing and or displaying in their booths, interact with them, and then, if possible, build network and then foster further growth in the health system in Ghana. Please, we will end this session. We will take everyone out, and in the next session, please visit the auditorium Again, refresh the auditorium browser and then join the next session exactly at 2:30 Ghana time or 4:30 p.m. German time. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. Bye-bye.